Well, hello everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we have to talk about how the used car market is currently reversing, which I know sounds crazy, but once I explain it, it'll make sense. Before we get in this video though, as always, if you want to save time and money, the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. So over the last year, we have seen huge declines in wholesale values with used cars and also with the retail values as well. Wholesale values declined by over 20%, and then retail values declined by just under 10%. And so, retail values always have to play a little bit of catch up. But that's what we've seen. And I've talked about this on the channel that, over the course of the 2023 sales year, I see this trend continuing because used cars are just still super expensive, especially with certain models that just basically ran up in price so high over the course of the pandemic that it's like until the prices come down to some sort of level that actually makes sense, like I don't see any reason for people to buy those cars in large numbers. However, we are currently experiencing a certain level of reversal within the used car market. Now, this isn't like a massive rebound. I'm not going to over exaggerate and be like, the used car market has completely flipped on its head and this and that, but this is a reversal. And so here's why it's happening. So first off, new car availability has been increasing at a pretty drastic pace, especially over the sales month of January that we are currently still living within. There are plenty of dealers that went from having basically no inventory a few months ago to now they are full of cars. And again, this is something that I am seeing anecdotally in real life because I went from not being able to get access to a bunch of cars to film on my channel to now I don't have access to everything, but I have access to way more cars than I used to. It's starting to feel like what it felt like prior to the pandemic, where there are so many cars out there that I have to be really picky with what I film because I can't film everything. And so it's a very interesting situation, but this new car availability was supposed to, emphasis on supposed to, put more downward pressure on the used car market, because the whole reason why used car prices got so high over the course of the pandemic is because there was no new car availability. It was like there was not enough manufacturing happening, and so it's like, oh, well, since you can't buy it new, you're going to have to buy it used, and everyone else wants to buy a car right now, and so it raises the prices. But now with a bunch of new cars available, you would think that this would in turn put more people into the new car market, which would then pull people out of the used car market, which would then lower prices. And then on top of that, obviously we still have sky high interest rates. And if you don't know, an interest rate on a used car is always going to be higher than an interest rate on a new car. I mean, just look at it from a lender perspective. If you're giving someone money on a used car, the chances of them paying their loan is a lot lower than on a new car because, well, new cars happen to have warranties that cover maintenance costs. Whereas with used cars, well, they don't always have warranties. A lot of them definitely don't have warranties. And so, if the person has some sort of catastrophic failure with the car, are they going to fix the car or are they going to make their payment, right? It's that type of situation. But moving on from that, right, it's, again, logically would put the car market in a situation where we would just see more and more new cars, which means that, new car pricing should come down, but also used car pricing should come down. And again, that's the trend that we've been seeing over the last few months is we've been seeing more and more new cars in dealer lots, and dealers went from selling new cars for over MSRP to MSRP, and now some dealers are selling quite a bit of their inventory at under MSRP. And then we saw used cars going from selling at original MSRP or sometimes even above original MSRP to pulling back quite substantially. I mean, there are a lot of used cars that were over MSRP during the course of the pandemic with their sales price, and now they're significantly under MSRP. However, this does not take into account personal agency with car dealers. And yes, it is car dealers that is actually somewhat causing this reversal. So I want to run you through what a typical scenario might be with a customer in today's market, and this might help explain what's happening. So I'm a customer, I go into a dealership, and let's say that I haven't researched anything within the car market, which actually happens quite often. People will research into the vehicle they want to buy, but they won't research into market conditions. They'll just be like, hey, is Toyota better than a Jeep, right? That's the type of stuff they look at. They won't look at, hey, is the car market collapsing, right? There's obviously a niche group of people that are interested in that, but it's a very small niche group of people. You have to remember there's over 30 to 40 million cars sold per year from a retail perspective, again, depending on the year, with both new and used cars. And, this is just me as putting out assumptions based on the amount of YouTube views that channels like this get. Maybe like 1 million, probably not even 1 million, probably like 500,000 of those purchases are made by people that have actually like researched into what's happening in the market. But I digress. With this person that is going into the dealership, they're going to go in and they're going to find out that interest rates are really high. And they're also going to find out that new car prices are way higher than what they were before. And then they're also going to find out that their car is not worth nearly as much as they expected because of all of the declines we've seen with used cars on a wholesale front. And so they're going to go from, I'm buying a new car, to, yeah, you know, got to talk to the wife, got to think about it. I think I'm just going to wait 6 months. And so then the dealership goes, whoa, hold up a second. You're the first customer we've seen today. We need to put together a car deal. And so it naturally, a dealership gets as aggressive as they possibly can. So, you know, they start discounting their car, and, you know, they start trying to find a better rate for this customer. Maybe, you know, even though the customer had gotten pre-qualified through a credit union, they try to find another credit union that has a better rate. And then finally, with the car that this customer is trading in, the dealership does everything they can to get as much money for that car as possible, so then they can, you know, put this car deal together. That's what dealers always say, is they want to put the car deal together. And so this is leading a lot of dealers to be way more aggressive on what they're paying people for their trade-ins. It's kind of shifting back towards what it was like prior to the pandemic, where dealers were doing a practice that's called over-allowing. So if you don't know, over-allowing is when a dealership pays above market value for someone's vehicle when it gets traded into the dealership. And this obviously, you know, from a business standpoint, might not make a lot of sense, because again, they're technically overpaying for a car. But on the same token, if the dealership puts together a car deal and then that customer goes and buys a warranty with the finance office and then maybe buys some parts with the parts department on the new vehicle, then they're able to make the money back in other ways. But regardless, this is what's happening in today's market. More and more dealers are stepping up on people's trade-ins, and in a lot of cases they're starting to again adopt the practice of over-allowing to put together car deals, especially if it's a car deal on a brand new car, because dealers want to hit those new car numbers again and just frankly get rid of this inventory that's been stacking up. Now, if you follow the logic from this point onwards, then you can see why this would cause somewhat of a correction in the used car market. Because if dealerships happen to be the, you know, businesses that have the most used cars, and they're having to pay more for used cars just to put car deals together, then that naturally is going to increase the prices of used cars. Because let's say that a dealership is trying to take in a car as a trade that is worth $20,000. Like, that's what the actual market value is. But to put the car deal together, they've got to pay, let's say, $21,000, right? They got to give the customer an extra $1,000. Well, that means they own that car for another $1,000, which means that when they actually price that car, they're going to have to price it for at least $1,000 higher, because their cost basis in that car is higher. Now, what some dealers will do is they'll actually put it into the original car deal. So they'll still say that they technically, quote unquote, bought the car for $20,000, and they'll just take a negative $1,000 on the original car deal. But it still kind of leads to the same scenario where, because these dealers are having to step up, you know, when it comes to trade-in values, that it naturally is just going to slightly push up these wholesale values with cars. And the other part of the situation is, because a lot of dealers were so freaked out about what was happening with used car values over the last few months, a lot of dealers offloaded a ton of their inventory, right? They sold it to other dealers, or they just sold it for cheap to get rid of that inventory. And so now a lot of dealers are starting to encounter a situation, because they kind of like oversold used inventory, that now they just don't have enough. And when they go to auction, they just can't find cars. And there are certain sources that dealers usually get cars from that they still aren't able to get cars from them. For example, rental car companies. A lot of new car dealers will buy cars from rental car companies that are of the brand that that new car dealer represents. They sell them as a certified pre-owned after they inspect them. And rental car companies aren't giving up cars right now, because rental car companies don't have enough vehicles. And so we're actually starting to kind of move back towards a quote unquote used car shortage. I wouldn't quite use that term yet, but all of this is pushing us towards a market where I don't see used car values like skyrocketing, but I wouldn't be surprised if looking at the wholesale values over the next, month or two, that they pretty much flatline, potentially increase a little bit, but they stop the steady decline that we've been seeing. And who knows how long this trend will continue, because again, the market is still trying to figure itself out. And whenever a market's trying to figure itself out, right, you're going to have your ups and your downs. And right now we're in kind of a weird sort of an up that could be a bigger up, but who knows what's going to happen at this point. So that's pretty much going to sum things up for today's video, talking about how the used car market is kind of in somewhat of a reversal. So all that you really need to know with this particular video is, because new car availability is so good and because dealers are more willing to work for you to put a new car deal together, chances are they're going to step up a little bit more on your trade-in. And in a lot of cases, they have to put certain car deals together based on, how much negative equity customers are coming in. I didn't touch base on that too much in this video, but that's another thing that's really causing issues right now, is there's so many people going to dealers that have so much negative equity that the dealers have to pay as much money as they possibly can for the trade-in just to get that customer bought on the new vehicle, just because of the negative equity that they're dealing with. And so it's a crazy situation. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. And with that being said, I'll see ya.